Voiceover, 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 voiceover. If you've ever watched a bearded dragon eat, you've witnessed one of the most efficient, see it, snap it mechanisms in the reptile world. In the wild, they don't have the luxury of being picky. The Australian interior is a land of boom and bust, so when the rains finally come and the desert floor erupts in greenery and insects, the dragon is ready to feast, unlike many of their cousins who stick strictly to greens or solely to bugs. The beardy is a committed omnivore. This dietary flexibility is their secret weapon. As juveniles, they're high-octane insect hunters, needing the protein to fuel rapid growth. But as they mature into those chilled-out adults we know, their metabolism shifts. They become opportunistic foragers, browsing on desert flowers, succulent leaves, and the occasional unlucky beetle. They use a tongue flick method similar to snakes, but with a twist. That little pink tongue is coated in a thick, sticky saliva. When it hits a cricket or a leaf, it acts like a high-speed adhesive, pulling the meal back into a mouth full of small triangular teeth that are actually fused to their jawbone. This is known as acrodont dentition. It's incredibly sturdy for crushing the tough exoskeletons of Australian beetles, but it also means they can't regrow their teeth like a crocodile can. For a dragon, dental health is literally a matter of survival. The world in Technicolor voiceover. One of the biggest misconceptions about reptiles is that they live in a dull, grey world. For the bearded dragon, the reality is quite the opposite. We humans are trichromatic, meaning we have 3 types of colour-sensing cells in our eyes. Bearded dragons, they're tetrachromatic. They have a 4th cone that allows them to see into the ultraviolet spectrum. This isn't just a party trick. It's vital for their social lives. A patch of skin that looks like plain orange to us might look like a glowing neon billboard to another dragon. It's also how they identify the best food. High nutrient greens and ripe fruits reflect UV light differently, helping the dragon spot a healthy meal from meters away in the shimmering heat haze. But their senses don't stop at sight. If you see a dragon licking its surroundings, the rocks, the dirt, or even your hand, they aren't tasting you in the way we think. They're using their Jacobson's organ, located in the roof of the mouth. They're essentially smelling the chemical signatures of their environment to determine if a stranger has passed through or if there's water nearby. The big sleep. Brumation voiceover. When the Aussie winter hits and the temperatures in the desert drop, the dragon faces a problem. There's not enough heat to power their digestion. Their solution? Brumation. This is the reptile version of hibernation, but with a few key differences. They don't just fall into a deep, unbroken sleep. Instead, their heart rate slows to a crawl, and their metabolism almost flatlines. They might tuck themselves away in a cool burrow for weeks, occasionally waking up to take a sip of water before drifting back off. In captivity, this often panics new owners. They think their pet is sick when, in reality, the lizard is just following a million-year-old biological clock. Even in a climate-controlled tank in a London flat, a beardie can feel the change in atmospheric pressure and the subtle shift in day length, prompting them to take their seasonal big nap. It's a remarkable display of how deeply rooted their wild instincts remain. The myth of the cuddle voiceover. Finally, let's address the big social media elephant in the room. Do bearded dragons feel love? If you search TikTok, you'll see dragons snuggling under blankets or hugging their owners. As much as we'd love to believe they're feeling a mammalian sense of affection, science suggests something a bit more grounded. Dragons are thermoregulators. If they're snuggling into your neck, they've identified you as a consistent 37-degree heat source. However, lack of love doesn't mean lack of bond. Ethologists have observed that dragons can recognize individual faces and show clear signs of trust. They have a relaxed state, a lack of stress hormones, that they only show when they feel safe. In the wild, Safe is a rare commodity. When a dragon closes its eyes while you stroke its head, it's not because it's enjoying the cuddle like a dog. It's actually a sign of extreme trust, as they are willing to shut down their primary sense in your presence. In a world of fast-paced wildlife myths, the true story of the bearded dragon is one of patience, sensory brilliance, and an incredible ability to adapt. They aren't just easy pets. They're tiny, living pieces of the Australian outback that have figured out how to thrive, one sunbath at a time. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Stay curious, respect the wild, and we'll catch you in the next one. Voiceover. While the bearded dragon has conquered the global pet trade back in the sprawling woodlands and deserts of Australia, they are facing a challenge that no amount of basking can solve. To understand the future of the species, we have to look at one of the most incredible and slightly concerning phenomena in modern biology: the science of temperature-dependent sex reversal. In most mammals, sex is determined by chromosomes, X and Y. Bearded dragons have a similar system using Z and W chromosomes. Usually, two Zs make a male. But Australian researchers have discovered that if the eggs in a wild nest are incubated at temperatures above 32 degrees Celsius, something shifts. The biological instructions are overridden. Even if a dragon is genetically male, ZZ, it will hatch as a fully functional female. In the wild, these sex-reversed females are actually more fertile and lay more eggs than natural females. On the surface, that sounds like a win for the population. But as the Australian climate continues to hit record highs, scientists are worried. If the nests get too hot too often, we could see a future where males become a rarity, potentially leading to a population collapse. It's a stark reminder that even a hardy survivor like the beardie is finely tuned to its environment, and that balance is more fragile than it looks. The ethics of the morph voiceover. This brings us to the human-shaped part of the dragon's story. Because no wild bearded dragons have been legally exported from Australia since the 1960s, every pet beardie you see today is a descendant of those original pioneer lizards. Over decades of captive breeding, humans have taken the wheel of their evolution. In the scrub, being sand-coloured is a survival requirement. If you're born bright red or snow white, a kookaburra will spot you from a kilometre away. But in captivity, we've selected for these genetic anomalies, creating what we call morphs, from the xeromorph, which is a ghostly, patternless grey, to the vibrant citrus and sandfire red lines. We've turned a desert camouflaged lizard into a living work of art. But this selective breeding comes with a responsibility. Take the silkback morph, for example. These dragons are bred to have almost no scales at all, leaving them with smooth, silky skin. While they look striking, they lack the protection of their wild ancestors. They are prone to dehydration, skin tears, and severe sunburn from the very UV lights they need to survive. As the hobby evolves, the conversation is shifting back toward wild-type health. Ethical keepers are increasingly prioritizing the normal or leatherback varieties, dragons that retain the rugged, spiky dignity of their wild cousins, a legacy in the sand voiceover. So, what is the true bearded dragon? Is it the bright orange lizard sitting in a bioactive enclosure in a suburban home? Or the dusty, pancaked survivor clinging to a fence post in the Mallee? The truth is, they are both. One is an ambassador, teaching millions of people about reptile intelligence and the need for conservation. The other is a vital link in the Australian ecosystem, a predator of pests and a source of food for the outback's great hunters. Australia takes the protection of its beardies seriously. Under the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act, it is strictly illegal to take them from the wild. This ensures that while the captive population thrives globally, the wild populations, the original architects of those head bobs and arm waves, remain exactly where they belong. When you look into the eye of a bearded dragon, you're looking at a lineage that has survived millions of years of Australian extremes. They've seen the continent dry out, they've outlasted megafauna, and they've adapted to living alongside us with a calm, prehistoric grace. Our job is to ensure that whether they're in the red dirt or under a heat lamp, the spiky sunbather always has a place in the sun. Thanks for joining us for this series on the central bearded dragon. If you've learned something new about these Aussie icons, give the video a like and let us know which animal we should cover next. From the red centre to the coastal scrub, there's always another story to tell. Catch you later. Voiceover. To wrap up our journey with the desert's most famous resident, we need to address the fine print of their biology. The parts that often get lost in 15-second social media clips. Because while the bearded dragon is hardy, they are governed by a set of strict physiological rules that, if ignored, tell a very different story. One of the most persistent myths you'll find online is the idea that a reptile will only grow to the size of its enclosure. It sounds like a convenient bit of magic, but in reality, it's a misunderstanding of stunting. A dragon's growth is dictated by genetics, nutrition, and endocrine health. If a dragon stays set because its tank is too cramped, it's not adapting. It's suffering from a hormonal backlog and skeletal issues. In the wild, a hatchling doesn't stop growing just because it lives in a smaller rock crevice. It grows until it's a formidable 40 to 60 centimeter adult, or it doesn't survive the season. The hydration mystery. Voiceover. Then there's the great hydration debate. You'll often see keepers soaking their dragons in tubs of water, claiming the lizard is drinking through its skin. From an ethological perspective, this is a bit of a furphy. Bearded dragon skin is designed to keep moisture in, not let it in. They are desert specialists. If their skin were porous like a frog's, they'd desiccate in the dry Aussie heat within hours. While they can absorb a microscopic amount of water through their vent, the cloacal opening, the vast majority of their hydration comes from two places: the food they eat and actually drinking with their mouths. In the wild, they've perfected a rain harvesting posture. During a rare outback shower, a dragon will stand on its tiptoes, head tilted down, allowing water to collect on its back and scales, and trickle down the grooves of its face directly into its mouth. It's a low-energy, high-efficiency way to survive in a land where every drop is gold. The competition for the light. Voiceover. If you've ever seen a photo of two bearded dragons cuddling or lying on top of one another, it might look like a sweet moment of reptilian friendship. But in the world of the Pagona, this is actually a silent, slow-motion battle. This is called stacking. Because UV light and heat are the most valuable resources in the desert, the dragon on top isn't hugging the one below. It's physically blocking its rival from the sun. By sitting on top, the dominant lizard monopolizes the best rays, effectively stealing the energy needed for digestion and immune function. It's a prime example of why, despite their docile reputation with humans, they are fiercely competitive with their own kind. In the wild, the loser simply moves to a different bush. In a cage, there's nowhere to go, which is why solo housing is the gold standard for their welfare. The permanent tail. Voiceover. Finally, let's talk about the tail. If you've ever owned a gecko or a skink, you know about caudal autotomy, the ability to drop a tail to distract a predator. It's a brilliant survival move, but it's one the bearded dragon never bothered to learn. Bearded dragons cannot drop their tails. If a dingo or a bird of prey grabs hold, the dragon has to fight its way out or lose the limb permanently. Because they can't regrow them, the tail is a vital tool for balance and fat storage. It's their emergency fuel tank for when the Australian winter drags on a bit too long. This lack of a quick release button is likely why they evolved such a formidable display of spikes and black beards instead. If you can't run away and leave a piece behind, you'd better make sure you look too scary to bite in the first place. Closing. The dragon's philosophy. Voiceover. There is something deeply grounding about sharing a space with a bearded dragon. They don't demand your attention with barks or meows. They don't have an off switch for their wild instincts. They simply exist, operating on a timeline that feels much older than our own, by stripping away the social media myths and looking at the cold, hard science of their survival, we don't lose the magic of the animal. If anything, we gain a deeper respect for them. They are a triumph of Australian evolution, a spiky, sun-loving proof that you don't need to be the fastest or the loudest to be one of the most successful creatures on Earth. So, next time you see a beardie bobbing its head or soaking up the midday sun, remember the red dirt, the third eye watching the sky, and the millions of years of outback history carried in those golden scales. Thanks for sticking with us through this deep dive. If you've enjoyed this look at Australia's favourite lizard, check out our other videos on the unique wildlife of the Southern Hemisphere. No worries, and we'll see you in the next one. Voiceover. As we reach the final chapter of our look at the central bearded dragon, we have to talk about the reality of living alongside these animals. Because for all their chill reputation, a dragon is a commitment that spans over a decade. They aren't just a starter pet, they are a long-term investment in an ancient life form. To ensure both the dragon and the keeper stay healthy, we have to address a bit of a hush-hush topic in the reptile world: Salmonella. It's important to understand that nearly all reptiles carry Salmonella bacteria as a natural part of their intestinal flora. For the lizard, it's harmless. For a human, it can be a bit of a worry, but there's no need for alarmism. Just good old-fashioned Aussie common sense. It's a zoonotic risk, which simply means it can jump from animals to humans. The fix is easy. Always wash your hands after handling your dragon or cleaning their enclosure. Treat them with the same hygiene respect you'd give a raw chicken in the kitchen, and you'll have a perfectly safe, healthy relationship. Handling with respect. Voiceover. When it comes to picking up a dragon, remember that, in the wild, the only thing that grabs them from above is a predator. If you swoop down like a hawk, you're going to trigger that parietal eye we talked about in part 1, and your lizard is going to feel a spike of cortisol. The best way to handle a beardie is the scoop method. Approach from the front or side where they can see you, and slide your hand under their chest and belly. Always support their weight and their feet. A dragon that feels airborne is a stressed dragon. By giving them a solid foundation, like a warm, stable branch, you're speaking their language of security. And a quick word on the baby dragon trap. It's easy to walk into a pet shop and see a tiny 10-centimeter hatchling and think, I can handle that. But remember, that little lizard is going to quintuple in size within a year. They require space, specialized lighting that needs to be replaced every 6 months, and a surprisingly large amount of fresh produce. If you aren't prepared for the teenager phase, where they eat like bottomless pits and can be a bit more testy with their head bobs, then you might want to reconsider. The ethical stewardship. Voiceover. The global popularity of the bearded dragon is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it has funded incredible research into reptile medicine and behavior. On the other, it has led to a disposable mindset in some corners of the pet trade. Ethics in the reptile hobby means moving away from the idea of the enclosure as a cage and seeing it as a microhabitat. Whether it's providing dig boxes so females can express their natural nesting instincts, or offering a variety of enrichment, like different textures and climbing heights. We owe it to these animals to give them a life that reflects the complexity of the outback. They aren't decorations. They are sentient survivors. In the wild, a bearded dragon has to make thousands of choices every day: where to bask, when to hide, what to hunt. In captivity, we make all those choices for them. The goal of a truly great keeper is to give some of that choice back, a piece of the red heart voiceover. As the sun sets over the McDonnell Ranges in the Northern Territory, the wild bearded dragons are tucking themselves into crevices, their dark beards fading back to a sandy grey to match the cooling rocks. They've been doing this for millions of years, long before the first maps were ever drawn. The fact that we can share our homes with such a creature is a privilege. They are a bridge between our modern world and a prehistoric Australia that still exists if you go far enough inland. They teach us about patience. They teach us that there is a quiet dignity in just sitting still and soaking up the light, whether you're a lifelong herpetologist, a new owner, or just someone who admires the rugged beauty of Australian wildlife. The bearded dragon stands as a true icon of resilience. They are the spiky, stoic, sun-drenched masters of the desert, and as long as we treat them with the respect they've earned, they'll continue to be the most fair dinkum ambassadors the reptile world has ever seen. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of Pogona viticeps. We hope you've come away with a new appreciation for the science, the stories, and the scales. Keep an eye on the horizon, keep learning, and we'll catch you in the next one.